Ladies and gentlemen, worry is one of the most common emotional experiences shared by people across all walks of life. It often disguises itself as responsibility, preparation, or concern, but at its core, worry stems from an inability to feel safe in the present and trust the uncertainty of the future. Understanding the true nature of worry is essential if one is to learn how to overcome it. This begins by looking at how worry is formed, what purpose it serves, and how it can be dismantled with awareness and intention. Worry is a repetitive mental pattern. It often begins with a single thought, what if, and then spirals into a chain of imagined scenarios, almost all of which end negatively. The mind becomes consumed with these mental simulations, creating stress responses in the body, including muscle tension, rapid heartbeat, and shallow breathing. This reaction is the body preparing to respond to a perceived threat, even though no real danger is present. This is important to understand. Worry tricks the brain into believing it is preparing for action, when in reality, it is often doing the opposite, paralyzing us with fear. One of the key components of worry is the desire for control. The mind wants to predict and manage every possible outcome to avoid pain or failure. This is a natural human tendency. Seeking control provides a sense of safety and predictability. However, life is inherently unpredictable. Events, people, and outcomes rarely move exactly as we expect. When we try to control what cannot be controlled, we create friction, frustration, and mental exhaustion. Worry, therefore, becomes a futile effort to solve problems that may not even exist, often wasting valuable time and energy. Another layer of worry is the emotional attachment to outcomes. People worry because they deeply care about their families, their goals, their health, or their future. This emotional investment can be healthy, but it becomes toxic when the attachment to specific outcomes overrides one's peace of mind. For example, a person might worry about a job interview because they believe their entire future depends on getting the job. While preparation and ambition are useful, believing that failure is catastrophic fuels anxiety. The key distinction lies in caring with commitment versus obsessing with fear. In many ways, worry is a sign that the mind is trying to live in the future. Instead of being rooted in the current moment, it projects forward into uncertainty, attempting to predict and solve problems that don't yet exist. This forward, focused thinking disconnects individuals from what is real and manageable in the now. It's like trying to steer a ship through a storm that hasn't arrived. When the mind leaves the present, it loses access to the calm, clear thinking that can actually lead to meaningful action. Worry, in this sense, is not a signal to act. It is a distraction from action. It's also worth exploring how worry becomes a habit. Over time, repeated thought patterns carve deep neural pathways in the brain. A person who worries frequently begins to experience worry as their default mode. Even in calm situations, the mind searches for something to be anxious about, reinforcing the belief that something is always about to go wrong. This cycle continues until it becomes an unconscious behavior. The good news is that these patterns can be unlearned, but unlearning begins with awareness. Recognizing when one is worrying and separating from the belief that worry equals productivity or safety. Educating the mind to see worry for what it is, an overactive protective mechanism, can help break its hold, rather than trying to suppress worry, which often makes it stronger. One can learn to observe it without attachment. This is the foundation of cognitive restructuring techniques used in psychology. Notice the worry, identify the underlying fear, and challenge the thought with evidence or perspective. Is the feared event truly likely? Is the worst case scenario as bad as the mind claims, and even if it happens, is it really unmanageable? Worry can also be seen as a signpost, a signal pointing toward what matters most to us. If someone constantly worries about their family's well-being, it shows love and responsibility. If someone worries about public speaking, it may show a desire to connect and be understood. The problem isn't the caring, it's the fear that things will fall apart. Reframing worry as an opportunity to connect with one's values rather than a threat to one's security can transform it into something far more empowering. Ultimately, worry is not eliminated through force, but through understanding. When we truly see what worry is, a loop of fearful projections disconnected from the present, we can begin to unhook from it. We can redirect that energy toward awareness, preparation, and presence. In doing so, we regain the ability to live more freely, act more wisely, and think more clearly. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but each moment of awareness weakens worry's grip and strengthens the mind's capacity for peace. Surrendering control is one of the most challenging and transformative decisions a person can make. It goes against the grain of how most people are conditioned to live, constantly planning, preparing, managing, and anticipating every detail of their lives. The desire for control is deeply embedded in the human psyche. It gives the illusion of security. People believe that if they can plan everything perfectly, control every outcome, and predict every variable, they can protect themselves from failure, loss, or disappointment. However, the reality is far different. Life is filled with uncertainty, and no amount of planning can eliminate that. Learning to release this need for control, and instead trust in a larger, unseen order, and bring extraordinary peace and clarity. This isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's not about abandoning goals or responsibilities. Rather, it's about shifting the internal posture of the mind from rigidity to openness. It's about acknowledging that while you can control your actions, efforts, and intentions, you cannot control how life responds. Outcomes are influenced by countless factors beyond any one person's control. The weather changes, markets shift, people behave unpredictably, plans fall apart, and in that chaos, many people cling even harder to control, believing that the tighter they hold on, the safer they'll be. Ironically, this often increases anxiety, not peace. Surrender, in this context, is about releasing the illusion that you are the master of every outcome. It's recognizing that life operates through rhythms, patterns, and sequences that are far more intelligent and interconnected than any single person can understand. Just as the tide moves in and out without your permission, so too does life unfold in ways that are sometimes mysterious, unexpected, or uncomfortable. Trusting that there is order even in the midst of uncertainty allows the mind to rest. It frees people from the exhausting mental loop of constant prediction and prepares them to respond with flexibility and resilience. The process of surrender begins with awareness. It starts by noticing the areas where you are grasping too tightly, where the fear of something going wrong has led you to overthink, micromanage, or stress excessively. It could be in relationships, careers, finances, or health. Wherever control becomes obsessive, peace disappears. By gently questioning this impulse, what am I afraid will happen if I let go? You start uncovering the root of the fear, and it is almost always a fear of uncertainty or pain. But uncertainty is not inherently dangerous. It is simply unknown. People often confuse surrender with weakness or laziness, but this is a misunderstanding. Surrender requires strength. It takes courage to move forward without guarantees. It takes inner confidence to do your best and then release attachment to the result. In truth, those who have learned to let go are not less active. They are more focused. They don't waste energy trying to control what can't be controlled. Instead, they invest their energy where it matters: effort, growth, learning, and alignment with purpose. There is also a psychological benefit to surrendering control. Studies have shown that individuals who adopt a mindset of acceptance and flexibility tend to have lower levels of anxiety and depression. They are less prone to burnout, more open to new experiences, and more adaptive in the face of change. This is because surrender calms the nervous system. When the brain is not stuck in a constant state of fight or flight, it can access deeper levels of creativity, intuition, and decision making. Surrender also invites a more cooperative relationship with life. Instead of treating every obstacle as a threat, it becomes possible to view challenges as part of a larger process. This doesn't mean blindly accepting everything or failing to act. It means responding instead of reacting. It means aligning your choices with values and vision while understanding that not every step of the journey will be visible in advance. Over time, those who embrace this way of living often discover a deeper form of intelligence guiding their path. Whether you call it intuition, conscience, or a greater natural force, there is a sense that something bigger than the individual is at play, moving things in and out of their lives for reasons not always immediately understood. Trusting in this broader intelligence does not remove effort or responsibility, but it does remove the burden of control, and in doing so, it restores peace. Letting go of control is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. It requires mindfulness, humility, and patience, but each moment of surrender builds strength. It opens the door to a life lived not in fear of the unknown, but in harmony with it. And in that harmony, anxiety fades, clarity rises, and life becomes not something to manage, but living by values rather than outcomes is a mindset shift that can radically change how a person experiences life. In a world driven by metrics, achievements, and external validation, it's easy to fall into the trap of defining success solely by what is gained, whether that be wealth, status, recognition, or goals achieved. But this kind of outcome-oriented thinking can create an unstable foundation for self-worth and decision-making. When all energy is focused on what might happen in the future, the present becomes a mere stepping stone, and life turns into a performance filled with anxiety, comparison, and fear of failure. Values, on the other hand, are internal principles. They are chosen traits of character and intention that guide behavior regardless of what happens externally. Examples of values include courage, patience, kindness, discipline, integrity, and compassion. Unlike outcomes, which are often out of your control, values are entirely within your control. You may not be able to guarantee success in a job interview, for instance, but you can choose to approach it with preparation, honesty, and humility. These internal choices matter deeply, not only because they shape behavior, but because they shape identity. Living by values means you begin to measure success not by what you get, but by how you show up. Did you act with honesty? Did you stay true to your principles, even under pressure? Did you choose patience over reaction? These questions anchor your focus in the present, and they free you from the constant tension of needing results to justify your worth. This mindset doesn't eliminate ambition, it refines it. Ambition driven by values is far more sustainable and fulfilling than ambition driven by fear or ego. There is also a powerful psychological reason for choosing a value-based life. When people tie their happiness exclusively to outcomes, they are more vulnerable to stress, disappointment, and emotional volatility. Why? Because outcomes fluctuate. Even with the best effort and planning, things don't always go as expected. If your peace of mind is tied to results, you're constantly at the mercy of circumstances beyond your control. However, when peace is tied to living out values, you gain a stable internal compass. You can walk through both success and failure with resilience, because your identity is not based on what happens to you, but how you choose to respond. This approach also enhances clarity in decision making. When faced with a difficult choice, people often freeze because they fear making the wrong move. But if a decision is evaluated through the lens of values, the path forward becomes clearer. Ask, which choice aligns with my values? Which option honors the person I want to be? When you make decisions based on who you want to become, rather than what you want to avoid, your actions become more purposeful and consistent. Another benefit of value-driven living is the impact it has on relationships and community. When people focus solely on outcomes, relationships can become transactional, built around usefulness, convenience, or advantage. But when values are central, relationships are guided by empathy, respect, and honesty. These deeper connections lead to more meaningful and lasting bonds. People begin to see each other not just as means to an end, but as fellow travelers on a path of growth and authenticity. Of course, living by values is not always easy. There will be moments when choosing integrity means walking away from a short-term gain. There will be times when choosing patience feels frustrating, or when choosing honesty makes you vulnerable. But these moments are where character is forged. Every time you choose a value over convenience, you strengthen your identity and deepen your trust in yourself. Over time, this becomes a source of immense personal power, because you no longer need external approval to feel whole. To live this way requires intention and regular reflection. Journaling, meditation, or simply asking yourself daily, "Did I live by my values today?" can reinforce this mindset. It's not about being perfect. It's about being aware. Each day becomes an opportunity not to win the race of life, but to walk it with purpose, grace, and authenticity. When people start to live by values instead of outcomes, something profound shifts. Life becomes less about chasing and more about becoming. Worry starts to dissolve because you no longer fear losing what you never truly controlled. What you do control, your thoughts, your actions, your choices, becomes your source of peace. And that peace isn't dependent on whether life goes your way. It's rooted in something stronger, your decision to live with purpose, no matter what comes. In a world filled with noise, motion, and constant stimulation, stillness has become a lost art. Yet, it is in stillness that clarity often emerges. Many people seek direction in life, answers about purpose, identity, and the next right step. But they look outward for those answers, scanning their environment for signs or waiting for someone else to tell them what to do. What they often overlook is that the clearest guidance comes not from external sources, but from within. And accessing that inner guidance requires space, silence, and stillness. Stillness is not merely the absence of sound or motion. It is a deliberate slowing down of the mind, a conscious shift from reaction to reflection. In today's fast-paced society, where productivity is often glorified and distraction is normalized, choosing stillness can feel counterintuitive or even uncomfortable. But that discomfort is exactly what makes stillness so powerful. It forces a confrontation with the inner world, the thoughts, fears, desires, and values that often go unnoticed in the busyness of daily life. Finding direction through stillness begins with learning to pause. This might take the form of silent contemplation, deep breathing, time in nature, or simply sitting quietly without distractions. The point is to remove the external noise long enough to hear the quiet voice inside, the voice of intuition, conscience, or inner knowing. This voice doesn't shout. It doesn't compete for attention like social media, notifications, or breaking news. It speaks in subtle impressions, feelings, and insights that often come only when the mind is quiet. One reason stillness is so effective is because it allows the mind to organize itself. When a person is constantly reacting to stimuli, emails, conversations, deadlines, the mind becomes cluttered. It jumps from one thought to another, rarely settling long enough to see the full picture. But in stillness, the mind begins to settle, thoughts slow down, patterns become visible, ideas connect, solutions emerge not through force, but through receptivity. There is also a biological basis for this. Research in neuroscience has shown that practices involving stillness, such as meditation or deep breathing, activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and recovery. This system reduces stress hormones, lowers heart rate, and calms the body. When the body is calm, the brain functions more efficiently. The prefrontal cortex, which governs decision-making and rational thinking, becomes more active. This means people literally think more clearly when they are calm, and calmness is a product of stillness. Stillness also reconnects people with their values. In the rush of life, it's easy to get swept up in the demands and expectations of others. People start to chase goals that aren't really theirs, or make choices based on fear rather than integrity. But when you create space to be still, you begin to notice what truly matters. You remember who you are when no one is watching. You reconnect with the values that feel right, not because someone told you to believe them, but because they resonate deeply with your sense of self. Direction gained through stillness is different from external instruction. It's not always a step-by-step plan. It may come as a sense of clarity about what to say in a difficult conversation, or a realization that a certain path no longer serves your growth. It may come as a nudge to explore something new or a deep sense of peace about staying where you are. Regardless of how it shows up, the guidance that arises in stillness is often more trustworthy than advice from outside sources, because it's rooted in your authentic awareness rather than someone else's agenda. Practicing stillness doesn't mean abandoning action. It means grounding your actions in awareness. It's about acting from a place of alignment rather than urgency. When you know your direction internally, you stop chasing validation externally. Your movements become more purposeful, your decisions more confident, and your presence more centered. To cultivate this skill, one doesn't need hours of meditation each day. Even a few minutes of intentional quiet can be powerful. Sitting in silence with a journal, taking a mindful walk without headphones, breathing deeply for 5 minutes, these small acts, done consistently, can open the door to profound inner wisdom. In a noisy world, stillness is a superpower. It is not a luxury or an escape. It is a necessity for those who seek to live with purpose and clarity. By creating space to listen, you create space to learn. And in that quiet, you often discover that the direction you were seeking was within you all along, waiting patiently beneath the surface, ready to be heard. Releasing worry is not simply a matter of telling yourself to stop worrying. If it were that easy, millions of people wouldn't struggle with anxiety every day. Worry is a deeply conditioned mental habit, often developed over years, and reversing it requires a combination of awareness, intention, and consistent practice. Fortunately, there are daily methods. rooted in psychology, neuroscience, and timeless wisdom that help retrain the mind to move away from fear and toward trust. These practices aren't magic solutions, but they are powerful tools. Used consistently, they can transform the mental environment from one of restlessness to one of peace. The first essential practice is journaling. Writing down your thoughts each day allows you to externalize worry. When worries remain in the mind, they often appear larger and more threatening than they really are. But when written on paper, they lose their grip. Journaling creates space between you and your thoughts. It also helps reveal patterns, what triggers your worry, what themes repeat, and how often you are worrying about things that never come to pass. To make journaling effective, try beginning or ending your day with a simple prompt. What am I worrying about today, and what would it look like to release that? Over time, this habit can train the mind to process fear in a healthier way. The second powerful technique is conscious breathing. The breath is a direct link to the nervous system. When you're anxious, your breath becomes shallow and fast. But if you choose to slow and deepen your breathing, you signal to the brain that you're safe. This simple shift from reactive to regulated breathing can calm the entire body. One effective method is the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Just a few minutes a day can lower stress hormones, slow the heart rate, and restore a sense of calm. The best part, it can be done anywhere, before a meeting, while commuting, or when you wake up in the morning. Another helpful practice is setting daily intentions. Unlike rigid goals, which are outcome-focused, intentions are about how you want to show up in the world. For example, an intention might be, today I will act with patience, or today I will trust the process. Setting an intention in the morning helps anchor the mind to a value rather than a result. This builds internal stability, so even if things don't go as planned, you remain connected to your chosen mindset. Over time, intentions act like guideposts, helping you navigate life with purpose instead of panic. Gratitude is also a potent antidote to worry. The mind cannot simultaneously focus on fear and appreciation. When you train yourself to see what is good, steady, or beautiful in your life, you interrupt the default pattern of scanning for danger. A daily gratitude practice might include writing down 3 things you're grateful for each morning, or reflecting on one meaningful moment at the end of the day. These don't have to be grand. Small things matter: a kind conversation, a warm meal, a moment of laughter. Gratitude reorients the mind toward abundance and reduces the need to worry about what is lacking. Movement is another underrated method for releasing worry. Physical activity doesn't just benefit the body, it's medicine for the mind. Exercise releases endorphins, boosts mood, and reduces the intensity of anxious thoughts. Whether it's a walk around the block, a yoga session, or a quick run, daily movement helps discharge built-up nervous energy. It also brings you into your body and the present moment, 2 things worry tends to pull you away from. Finally, one of the most transformative practices is mindful acceptance. Rather than resisting or fighting your thoughts, you can learn to observe them without judgment. When a worry arises, say to yourself, I see this thought, but I don't have to follow it. This simple statement creates a mental pause. It breaks the automatic identification with worry. You're not the thought, you're the observer of it. Over time, this mental space allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. Incorporating even 1 or 2 of these practices into your daily routine can make a significant difference. The key is consistency. Worry is a learned habit, and like any habit, it can be unlearned with repetition. These tools are not about escaping life or pretending that difficulties don't exist. Instead, they are about building the inner strength to meet life with trust instead of tension. Releasing worry isn't about being passive, it's about actively choosing peace, moment by moment, breath by breath. With time, these choices become second nature, and when they do, you begin to live from a place not of fear, but of quiet confidence in the journey unfolding before you.